Good evening, folks. It's been a while since I've posted any videos, but I thought it would be remiss of me if I didn't post this video, to congratulate my friend, Charles Edwards Whittaker, on his monumental achievement that has afforded him the great luxury of being included into the 2025 list of inductees into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. I am so immensely proud of Charles and of all of his accomplishments in the ring that has culminated to this point and has caused him and his efforts, his achievements to be recognized to the extent that he's now being inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. And just to put this into perspective, people like Roy Jones Jr., people like Antonio Tarver, people like Muhammad Ali, I should have mentioned him first. These are the greats, that are members of this elite fraternity. There are numbers of great champions throughout the entire boxing fraternity. Many of them, as I said, Muhammad Ali was inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. Roy Jones, Tarver, Winky Wright, a lot of great boxers. It's incredible that Charles, who was born and bred, grew up in the Cayman Islands, persevered, had the audacity and the tenacity to follow his dreams. And I can speak to some of this because Charles and I have spoken about this over the years. And if anyone knows Charles, they know that he is very good at articulating and telling you the story of his life. And so, he just, against all odds, against all the naysayers, against those persons who didn't have the faith that he had and the belief in his abilities that he had, he persevered and he achieved greatness. Of course, I couldn't be making this video without acknowledging some of the persons that was instrumental in his achievement in the ring. First and foremost, Mr. Dalmain E-Bikes of precious memory. Mr. Didi, he was affectionate to call, but Mr. Dalmain, I know Mr. Dalmain and Charles used to call him like that was his father, That man believed in Charles. If you hear Charles tell you the story, that man gave Charles hope. That man saw something special in Charles. And, I'm going to try to make this video as positive as possible because God knows this is an incredible achievement. But I cannot and I will not be a clout chaser and come on here and post a video just because. No. This is going to be a video that's going to highlight some things that cut deep cut deep, but nevertheless has shaped Charles into the person he is. Let's go up. Let's continue. There were persons when they found out that Charles was going to the gym, to the boxing gym in West Bay, which at the library, where the library is in front of the entrance to the John A. Cumber Primary School. That used to be the boxing gym back in the day. And when persons found out that Charles was going to the gym, they went to the gym. Some of them found Mr. Dalmain on the street and told Mr. Dalmain, "You're wasting your time with Charles. He not gonna be nobody. You need to throw him out of the gym. He just a troublemaker. He not gonna be a nobody. He's from Old Bush. Yeah. Why you wasting your time with that boy?" But Mr. Dalmain told them that Charles was exactly the person he wanted and needed in that gym. And Mr. Dalmain believed and saw something special in Charles even before Charles saw something special in him. For those of you who know, Charles spent many years in reform school. I won't get into the details too much about that. Again, don't want to get too negative. But suffice it to say, Charles didn't have to go to reform school. Those persons who Charles speak of, I'm not going to call their names because I haven't spoken to them before making this video, but you all know who you are, that went to reform school or knew Charles, knew that he wasn't really supposed to be there. Wasn't really supposed to be there. But he was there. And Charles will tell you the story of how he felt abandoned by his country and by his family, and how he suffered greatly. Mostly it was mental torture and torment. Such a young age, leaving his island, leaving his family, not knowing why he was being placed in reform school. And he wanted to commit suicide. He wanted to harm himself, to end his life, end it all. And when he was contemplating that one evening, he heard of a young up-and-coming boxer that was going to fight for the heavyweight title of the world, Mike Tyson. And something said to him, "Don't harm yourself. Don't harm yourself. Watch this fight. And if Mike can do it, you can do it." And so we know the history. Mike won that fight, became, I think, if not the youngest, one of the youngest heavyweight champions of the world. And that changed, that inspired Charles, and that changed his trajectory, so that when he came out to Cayman, his cousin John Evans took him to meet Mr. Dalmain at the gym. And Charles didn't even feel that he was worthy to go to the gym. Mr. Dalmain said, "No, come. Come. I want you. Come." And as they say, the rest was history. There was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Phil Eckstein. Mr. Phil was instrumental with coaching as well in the early days, along with Mr. Dalmain Ebanks. And of course, anybody that knows Charles will know that another great coach in his life was Mr. Norman Wilson. Mr. Norman really helped Charles a lot, propelled Charles. And Charles, being that ever-giving bleeding heart type of individual, wasn't selfish with Mr. Norman, brought Mr. Norman to the Cayman Islands, and initially even paid Mr. Norman out of his own pocket to train the boxers at the gym. The same gym that he was refused access to. But we'll get into that later on. Then there was Mr. Joe Quinlan, another coach that he speaks highly of. Mr. Del Cava, I think that's his name, Del Cava, yeah. He spoke about him as well. And Mr. George Collard. They were all coaches along the way that helped Charles. And then there's this guy, Alfred Smith, affectionately known as Alfie. When Charles went up to Pensacola to fight to be a part of Roy Jones Jr.'s boxing club, Alfie was there helping him along the way. He has some stories to tell you about Alfie and him going on these road trips, taking fights, and some of the places they passed through. Some of the places that they passed through, black people shouldn't be passing through. You know, it's such a story when you listen to Charles tell his story. And he can remember dates and times like it was just yesterday. And he remembers them. It's not like he's made it up, because he'll tell you the same story 3 years later. And he can tell you the time, who he fought, what title, when it was, where it was, what happened. He has a impeccable memory for someone who has taken a considerable amount of shots. But he's a good guy. And that's why I'm taking the time to share some stuff tonight. Because I think that in moments like these, they say you mustn't make why make a lie get in the way of a good story? But I don't believe in that. I believe that if there's a lie, it can't be a good story. So I'm going to set the record straight tonight. We've got a lot of Johnny come latelys who are now sitting down congratulating Charles. But when Charles was putting on fights in the Cayman Islands, ask them how many people came to those fights. When Charles walks around in his beloved Isle Cayman, he walks around almost like an invisible person. And the reason I say almost is because when he's ready, you're not going to miss his presence. But he walks around almost like an invisible person. He has a pharmacy in the Cayman Islands. Very few Caymanians come in support, including his family, being honest. But now everybody's congratulating Charles. Well, I'll continue on that in a little bit. Let's go back to some of his coaches. So Alfred Smith, affectionately known as Alfie, who, by the way, about 3 years ago, I think, wrote a book. And then, of course, there's Roy Jones Jr., who he has to give a shout out to. Roy wasn't his coach, but he used to train at Roy's facilities, Roy's gym. And Roy stopped and gave him a lot of advice. And I can tell you personally that Charles calls Roy, speaks to Roy from time to time. They communicate, they speak, even now, Then there's Mr. Alton Murkison. That was another person that Charles speaks about highly. In terms of family, Charles speaks obviously about his mom. His mom didn't miss any of his fights. She tried to attend everyone. And a lot of the fights that she attended, he didn't even know she was in attendance. He didn't even know his mom was coming. But she was his number one fan. And I am sure that if there is one thing that Charles could wish for, was that his mom was alive to see him being inducted into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. His dad was also immensely proud of him, Mr. Sherrill Goring, of blessed memory as well. And For those of you who may not know, his dad was also a boxer. George Goring, George Whittaker, was also a boxer, heavyweight. And he was in the business of knocking people out quick, fast, decisive. Anyone from that time will tell you that. Even Mr. Dalmain Ebanks would tell you that Cheryl was a formidable boxer. Never lost a fight, knocked people out. And then there's his sister, Shernette, and her husband of blessed memory, William Watson. They were always there from the beginning, always there in every way that you could imagine. Of course, there's his wife, Maggie, who has been there, who has stood by. She wasn't there throughout the first part and even the majority perhaps of his boxing career, but for the latter part that she's been there, she's been that rock in his life. As I say to you, they've opened up a pharmacy and they're living their lives, just like everyone else. But she's been that steady, strong support that he's so proud of. And so, if you know Charles, you're going to know Maggie. You're going to know Maggie. Then there's Miss Olive, who's Shernette's helper. You see, Charles doesn't forget those things either. Some of us may step aside or disregard certain people because of, oh, that's the helper. No. He remembers her making breakfast for him, making sure that he had his meals. His cousin, John Evans of blessed memory, he was the one that introduced Charles to Mr. Dalmain. He was also a boxer, you see. And so when Charles came out from reform school and he shared with John what he wanted to do, he said, come. Then there's very special friends that Charles speaks highly about that were there with him throughout certain periods of his life and of his professional career. Miss Anne-Marie Bird, Caymanian Airways. Charles speaks of her highly. She was such a great support. She helped to organize things, the fights in Cayman and that sort of stuff, getting boxers down, organizing flights, that sort of stuff. I remember him speaking to me vividly about these things over the years. John Ashley Ebanks. Charles tells me that there was a time when he in Florida where he was almost homeless. And John Ashley took him in, drove him to and from the gym every single day. For years. And then helped him by employing him part-time to help him. Charles, don't forget these things. Then there's Rex Ebanks. Rex is a low-profile guy. Rex don't want to really be named, so I'm not going to say too much about Rex because I know how Rex is. Rex don't really want to be named. But we have to give credit where credit is due. Rex played an incredible role in Charles's life, providing him with professional financial advice, opening doors so that he could put on these fights in the Cayman Islands and come up with the necessary funds to get the overdraft necessary to put these fights on. And let me also say Ray Hides as well. Again, these guys don't want to be named. These are the guys that lurking in the shadows, but had his back from way back. And Charles speaks highly of these individuals. Charles remembers Cadu Brown for a kind gesture that he did many, many, many years ago when he was actually staying. Charles was staying with John Ashley, and Cadu had come up for a weekend, and they were hanging out. And Charles remembers something. I'm not going to put it on blast. Charles remembers an act of generosity and kindness that Cadu did towards him. He never forgets it. Never forgets it. His special friend, Mr. Jimmy Powell, doesn't forget the assistance, the support, the advice, the encouragement that he received from Mr. Jimmy. Mr. Ivan Farrington, Charles doesn't forget you, sir. He's so grateful for the support that you gave him, the advice you gave him. Mr. Floyd Bush, Pilar Bush's father, who Charles remembers and calls affectionately Uncle Floyd. Charles tells me that that he wanted to go down and watch the Pee Wee Football League at the field in West Bay, and that he would always be targeted by parents. They don't want Charles at the field because he come from Old Bush and he not nobody, he causing trouble. And mind you, Charles is just sitting down up there wanting to play, wanting to watch, not to play, wanting to just watch the football. And he says, Uncle Floyd would say to him, you leave him alone. And he would beckon to Charles, say, come here, Charlie, come here. Come sit by Uncle Floyd. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Gave him great advice over the years, lots of support, encouragement. Charles don't forget. Charles doesn't forget these people. He doesn't forget those persons who were kind to him. Doesn't forget those people. He speaks of Raul Alvarez as his agent. Great guy. Charles met when he went to Florida. Great guy. A pure heart. A committed person. Genuine person. Charles always spoke so highly, speaks still, of Mr. Raul Alvarez. These are the people. These are the people that helped to support Charles. You know, there's an African proverb, takes a village to raise a child. Well, you know what? It also takes a village to raise a champion. These people that I'm naming are people that have been with Charles throughout his career, and not just as colleagues and peers, but as supporters and friends, as ravens who feed him or fed him when he needed sustenance. Let's not forget it. We see Charles, you know, Maya Angelou is known for famously saying, speaking about haters, people, those of us who hate, she says, they see our glory, but they don't know our story. You know, many of us see, we heard, we saw, we witnessed him being named in the class of 2025 to be inducted into the Florida Hall of Fame, Boxing Hall of Fame. But we think that that's something easy. There's nothing easy to being an elite athlete. But I can assure you, there's nothing easy about being an elite fighter. Every vulnerability is exposed. Every weakness is tested. And no matter the outcome, in defeat or in victory, you will always be scrutinized. You will always be critiqued, criticized. It's not easy. Mike Tyson is known for famously saying that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Not a lot of us knows what it is to get punched in the mouth. Charles knows what it is to be punched all over the body and to still have a game plan and to still not abandon the plan. Fighters that I remember him speaking about over the years was Bobby Peart. Bobby Peart is a police officer, but he speaks so highly of Charles. And Charles speaks so highly of him. And they both hold in such high esteem Dalmain, Coach Dalmain Ebanks, Mr. Dalmain. I mean, you got to understand, when you hear Charles and some of these other guys speak about Dalmain Ebanks, Mr. Dalmain Ebanks, it's almost like, I wouldn't say he's a god, but he's like their savior. I guess they say he saved them, More on that soon. I'll get back to that. Then there's Ian Osborne. He spoke about Ian quite a bit. Of course, John Evans, his cousin who passed away several years back. But he's always speaking about John. Him and John didn't just have a relationship because of boxing. I mean, they grew up together. John and his brother Dean, they all grew up together. Ernest Barnes, the incident that occurred some years ago at the boxing gym. Ernest Barnes prevented a bad situation from getting extremely horrific. You talk about a friend in need is a friend indeed. Ernest Barnes is a true friend of Charles Whittaker. Not only that day, but I witnessed, because I was also a part of those that went to court with Charles. There was only 3 that were consistently there. Ernest, Charles's wife Maggie, and myself. We were the ones that were consistently there. So all of the people who are now on social media congratulating Charles, I simply ask, where were you? Where were you? I know where some of you were. You were out there criticizing him and questioning why he had to go and break down the door. Why? Yeah, I know. I remember. You see, even now, it gives you a distasteful feeling. You're probably saying to me, "Oh, Jonathan, why are you going there?" Let me tell you why. Because you need to understand why he did what he did. He didn't do it because he lost his mind. I heard that several times. Oh, Charles lost his mind. Believe you me, if Charles Whittaker had lost his mind, it would have been a different situation. What I saw was a mind at work. But it wasn't a mind that was there to destroy. It was a mind that was trying to defend. That was the gym that he literally helped to build. He went out there seeking donations. He never rested until the government, and I might add, my memory serves me correctly, it was the PPM government. He persisted and he persisted and he persisted, and they finally built the gym. And I'll tell you something, and I won't share the name. I'll leave it right where it is. But the facts are there for those who want to go and check. It was suggested that the gym should be named after Charles. And Charles said, no, it should be named after Mr. Dalmain. Because if it wasn't for Mr. Dalmain, there wouldn't be a Charles Whittaker. That is the heart of Charles Whittaker. But for him, that gym was like his church. So how dare he be locked out of the church he built, or he helped to build? And to know, and to hear that the lady that he's having an argument with in the gym is saying to him, who do you think you are? When was the last time you picked up a mop and bucket to clean the gym? Imagine that. Not knowing that the very ring that they were up in there using, it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Charles Whittaker. Okay? Lock him out of the gym. Imagine, if you can, Duran or Julio Cesar Chavez being locked out of a gym in Mexico or in Panama, or Mike Tyson being locked out of a gym in New York. Imagine. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And we still don't understand why he did what he did. Let me put it to you in another way, by asking you all a question. Now, this is directed at Caymanians. When are you going to start to break down the doors and the walls of discrimination in your country? And when you do, the first one that does it, are you going to look at them and say they're a troublemaker? Why are they doing it? Instead of saying, give me a hammer, let me help him too. You see? Think about that. There are many more doors, many more windows and doors and walls that need to be beaten down in the Cayman Islands. There's nothing wrong with standing up for your rights. And sometimes you can't be a law-abiding citizen and stand for your rights. Remember, it used to be legal to own slaves. It used to be legal. It used to be legal to have indentured servants. Okay? It used to be legal to have segregated schools. So let's not go there. There's a big difference between what's legal and what's right. And what is legal today was first always right. And there's a lot of legalities today that are still not right. So let's just keep it in perspective. But let me move on. Some of the other boxers you should mention: Felix Hernandez, Noel Thomas, George Foster, who we know as Foster, who is a great boxer, who works at the Water Authority. Charles hasn't forgotten him, and Dave Grant. I can also assure you that there are many government officials that assisted Charles. I wouldn't say many. That's not true. Many. Let's say many. And there were also some that when they had it to give, and when they had the responsibility and the authority to show support, they didn't. But McKeever Bush showed Charles a great deal of support. Him and Miss Kerry. But McKeever, as a politician, minister in government, did a tremendous amount to support Charles. I have to say as well, because I'm speaking truth tonight. I've always spoken truth, but I want to make the distinction that this is not political. This is now just truth. And so, Alden McLaughlin also provided tremendous support to Charles. As I said, I am almost certain that the PPM built, or it was their government. It might have been approved by the other government, but they made sure it was in the budget. It stayed in the budget. They built the gym. But Alden also supported, Sir Alden also supported Charles. I also want to state quickly as well that CG also supported Charles. Dr. Frank also supported Charles. Mr. Benson Ebanks of blessed memory, not as a politician, but years later, because obviously when he was a politician, Charles wasn't boxing. But when Charles started, Mr. Benson Ebanks also supported Charles. And I know these things because Charles and I have spoken about this several times. Of course, there were other ministers that didn't support Charles. I remember a particular event that took place under the PPM government where a professional fight was held here. And Charles got on the card because he fought to get on the card. And he wasn't even aired. He wasn't live. He wasn't broadcasted. They spent $1 million to have fights in Cayman. And our one and only professional boxer at the time wasn't even on the card. Had to fight to get on the undercard. And it wasn't even televised. Think about that. Then there was another minister that withheld funds to support Charles to get his title shot. Yeah. And this I know. I know this personally. Won't call the names. You know, and we're speaking about the Dalmian Ebanks boxing gym. Let's talk a little bit about the Winter Haven boxing gym and the Winter Haven boxing family. So you see, you know, the word of God tells you that a prophet really gets no respect in his own land, you know. That's Charles Whittaker. Not as a prophet, but as a boxer. Doesn't get a lot of respect. He moves around this place, like I said to you, you know, like he's invisible. You know. People don't want to acknowledge him. His own people don't want to acknowledge him. He walks in. I've been in restaurants. I've gone to the bank with Charles. I see how people pretend to not see him. You know. And I it's so funny. I've seen people look at Charles like with the look like, who do you think he is? And to be honest with you, he's a humble dude. He's a humble dude. You get to know him. Means you no harm. No one will fight. No one will fight more for and fight harder for a Caymanian than Charles Whittaker. Charles doesn't know any other way. He will fight. I think people know that about Charles. I think they know that. He has a very small tolerance for foolishness. I think that's probably why we get on so well, because I also have a very short fuse. I'm praying about it. But I have a small, short fuse when it comes to stupidity and foolishness. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, I just wanted to mention the Winter Haven boxing family. They treat him like family. He don't have a gym in the Caymanian to train at. He doesn't. And I can assure you that Charles is not going back to the Dalby and Ebanks boxing gym. I'm certain of that. He doesn't have a gym to go to. But in Winter Haven, oh, he's always welcome. As a matter of fact, right now he's training a guy. I'm not going to call his name, but this guy is someone to. You guys will know. In time. But I can tell you, I just want to pause a little bit and speak a little bit. I think I've mentioned some names, and these are all names that I know because Charles has mentioned these names to me. These are the people that helped Charles along the way. And I'm sure I'm probably missing some. And I apologize for that. This isn't Charles, this is Jonathan feeling compelled to say something. And so I'm just remembering, I wrote some stuff down, just remembering some of the stuff that he's had to endure. But it hasn't been an easy road for Charles. It hasn't been an easy road for many of us who believe in speaking truth to power, who believe in doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do, who don't necessarily walk around with a badge that says integrity, but lives a life that demonstrates integrity. You know, this morning I shared a quote on my Facebook page that says, "Real isn't who's with you at your celebration. Real is who's standing next to you at rock bottom." And I can tell you, not many people were standing with Charles when he was at rock bottom. Not many people still standing with Charles. You know, I have looked at Charles Whittaker's posts, for example, during the Christmas, where he is posting his stuff and encouraging Caymanians to come and check out his pharmacy, which I can tell you, by the way, has the best prices on the island for many things. Most things, you can't find a better deal, especially at Christmas time. And I have noticed the number of people that have liked it or shared his post. And when I tell you, you don't have to take my word for it. Go on to his page, Charles Whittaker Facebook page, and you scroll through and you'll see. They don't like it. They don't share his posts. And they don't come and patronize the business. Okay? I don't understand it. These are the same Caymanians that talk about the injustices that take place daily with Caymanians and why Caymanians can't get ahead. Well, I can tell you Caymanians can't get ahead because Caymanians are afraid of the truth. They hate people that have a backbone, that stand up for the truth, and they refuse to side with people of integrity. But I want to tell you tonight, the people of the Caymanians, the people of the world, anybody that's watching this post, I am proud of Charles. Charles has done an incredible job as a professional boxer, and now he's being acknowledged as such. And so because of that, there are many, 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 many Caymanians, where you come John, come latelys, that are now saying, oh, congratulations and well done, and this and that. But where were they? Where were they? Where were they? You know, when I was a child, we used to recite a poem by a guy by the name of, I think his name was Henry Longfellow or something like that. But I know it's a famous quote. When I quote it, everyone will know it. I can't remember the name, but it says, "The heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night." I can tell you that while others were sleeping, Charles was working. Charles doesn't drink. Charles doesn't smoke. Charles doesn't fraternize. Charles is always, or was always, in the gym. Still, actually, I'll call him, when he's in Florida. I call him regularly. And he's either driving to the gym, at the gym. JP, I'll call you back at the gym now. JP, I driving to the gym. Always. Always. You see, boxing isn't just a sport for Charles. Boxing is a way of life. It saved Charles. If Charles didn't become a professional boxer, I don't know what Charles would have done. And Charles and the Cayman Islands is better for the decision he made of becoming a professional boxer. He's better for it. We're all better for it. And today we celebrate as a nation. Whether or not, I guess, that's how some of us feel. Whether or not we support him, we celebrate with him, because, how does it go now? So the famous quote, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. So for as long as we thought that Charles Whittaker was a failure, we wanted nothing to do with him. So when he broke the glass at the gym, we thought that he was a failure then. We wanted nothing to do with him. And because we don't hear anything about him, and he has this pharmacy, we figure, oh, he's a failure. We don't want nothing to do with him. Right? Yeah. We want nothing to do with him. But now that he's recognized by the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. Oh my goodness. Charles, old buddy. Charles, my friend. Congratulations, friend. Congratulations, old buddy. Congratulations, my brother. But you can't share his posts about coming to his pharmacy on social media. You can't come to the pharmacy and buy a candy or fill a prescription at his pharmacy, but you're his friend. I couldn't pass up this opportunity to really just highlight the hypocrisy that we insist upon practicing in the Cayman Islands. It's sad, really. But I'm going to end this on a high note. I'm going to end this by saying, Charles, my friend, happy birthday to you. He got inducted yesterday, the 4th of December, and today, the 5th of December, he's celebrating his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. Happy birthday. I am so immensely proud of you, Charles. I've said it to you personally. I'm now just publicly putting it out there because I want the whole world to know how proud I am of you. You are a true example of what greatness looks like. You, my friend, is really what success looks like. You have been strong. You have weathered the storm of life. You have weathered the darts thrown at you by your Caymanians. You have taken it all. You've been bold and decisive in what you've had to say. You've been critical where you've had to be critical. And for those of us who truly know you, we know that everything you do and everything you try to show is because of the love you have for your country and your countryman. Many people won't see it. Many people won't know it, and they certainly won't appreciate it. You see, Charles, and I've said this to you before, we judge others based on how we see ourselves. And so, if we are afraid, if we're coward, we see everyone in that light. And if we find someone who isn't afraid and who isn't a coward, we don't big them up. We don't exalt them. We tear them down because we're jealous and we're also afraid of what they can do to jeopardize our quote unquote freedom and liberty. You see, we become enemy number one. And that is why, for a very long time, as I stated at the beginning of this post, I've come off of social media. I haven't posted anything in terms of videos or anything like that. But I felt compelled tonight to have to state some facts, put some stuff in a proper perspective, and state some facts. It's a lot more I could say, but as I said, I'm trying my best to keep this very positive. And it should be, because I can tell you, the moment is positive. This year, no matter what happens this year, Charles has already won. Charles has already won. Charles, may the good Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and to be gracious unto you and to give you peace. I love you, bro. I love you. And I'll tell you this, you will always be my champion. Good luck, and good night to Cayman.